You were there from the very beginning, and as I said in the introduction, this was all about the war on terror, wasn't it? It was all about the belief. It was all about the belief that the terrorist cells, the plotting and the planning was going on inside Afghanistan. I mean, did you believe that that was right? Did you believe going in was the right thing to do?
100%. Now, take yourselves and your emotions back to 2001. 9/11 had just happened. A lot of us in America, and I'm sure around the world, felt vulnerable and shocked. How did this happen? And it was as little as a few days later that we had an idea that it was an al-Qaeda attack. And if you recall, even way back then, we tried to get the Taliban to give over Osama bin Laden. And they had a clear choice to. And President Bush at the time said, either you're with us or against us. We inserted on 19 October 2001. It was as little as 100 Army Special Forces Green Berets, and then some of our British SAS and Special Boat Squadron folks came in, and we had literally achieved our objective in 100 days. And that was to displace the Taliban out of power. But more importantly at the time, it was to take the base of operations in al-Qaeda out of Afghanistan, and we achieved that.
So is the argument then, Scott, that, this was a very successful short-term military operation? Should it, I mean, hindsight, of course, is a wonderful thing, but is that when it should have ended, in your opinion?
We actually thought it did. I think by the time in April of 2002, there was this idea of a small leave-behind force. We didn't understand, the mission, but I think the world, especially America, got distracted by Iraq, and we turned our attention to that. And if you follow history to about another 7 years, Afghanistan was quiet. And we had this noble idea of, building some kind of infrastructure, some kind of government, maybe a small type of national army. And it was in everybody's back thought. And really, it wasn't until 2010 that this famous word called the surge came about, and this idea with more soldiers and more troops that you could put Afghanistan back together again. And 10 years later, it wasn't true.
No, and tell me, how do you feel? I mean, you were there, you served, you understand what the losses were that that we took, that you took. There, how do you feel now?
Is how I feel now. My son went to Afghanistan last year and spent a year serving. So as a soldier, I know a soldier's duty. As a father, I didn't understand the policy that we were trying to execute. Afghanistan, in my humble opinion, needs another couple hundred years in the oven. It wasn't ready for what we try to present to Afghanistan. It actually needs to become what it's naturally going to become. And unfortunately, the Taliban stuck to local solutions and local relationships while we wrestled ourselves in the national aspects in Kabul.
So in the end, it was right to leave, Scott, was it?
It was. We needed to. We thought very naively that we had provided all the solutions militarily for the Afghans to be a counter to the Taliban. But the Taliban knew where to fight, and they fought at the local level. They fought in the checkpoints. And that's where you see instantly it has changed to their favor. Maybe not in the capital, maybe not yet, but they won the hearts and minds. Not really the hearts. They took the hearts and minds of the local people who just want to be and just want to exist.
And it seems, Scott, that the local warlords, who, as you well know, have been very powerful figures in Afghanistan, they haven't really tried to put up much resistance to the Taliban this time, have they?
I think everybody's reeling. It's the pendulum. The Taliban will sweep through, they'll settle into it, and now they'll expose their positions. They'll have to man the checkpoints. They'll have to try some governance. What you're going to see is the tragedy of the Taliban justice. All of those that were our partners are in fear of their lives. What I personally would hate to see is all of the intellectuals of Afghanistan flee. The business leaders, the bankers, the doctors, everything that was trying to make that a normal society will now try to leave that country, and you'll be back 100 years.
Yeah, and there's a big row going on here in the UK about the interpreters, the Afghan interpreters who helped British forces whilst we were there. And we've not exactly been generous about giving them sanctuary back in the United Kingdom. And of course, you know, with the Taliban taking all of this territory, the fear that there'll be reprisals against the interpreters and perhaps even against their families too. Tell me, how has America dealt with your interpreters?
Well, it was very slow in the legal process, the sense that the State Department in the visa application, now that nobody can even travel to get to any type of consulate or get to Kabul, you're basically in a refugee in a flight and smuggle status. So you see a lot of interpreters trying to figure out a way to get out of any kind of border, but that's even closed right now. And you have the Taliban that have now secured miles before the border. So it's going to turn, unless we can turn this momentum around in 90 days, we're going to see a tremendous amount of payback and retribution that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's the great fear. And I mean, none of us yet know whether Kabul can hold or not. There are, experts on both sides making different predictions, but it seems to me that once Kabul is surrounded, effectively it'll be in some form of siege. If Kabul falls and the whole country comes under Taliban control, I would have thought there's no prospect of us going back, is there?
I don't think so, unless it becomes a situation where we have a toehold, maybe an old base that can be kind of resurfaced. The Afghans have the military capacity to resist the Taliban. They are a loose organization of men with small arms. We have trained the Afghan army. They have the Air Force. They have the heavy lift. They have everything that they need to, but do they have the will and desire to fight for it? And that's where we got to ask the Taliban people. It's up to them to fight who they want to be in charge of them.
So in conclusion, Scott, we did a great military job in the beginning. We achieved the objectives. We stayed too long, and it's ended pretty badly.
I think so. I think we're seen and we're shocked because the citizens of both of our countries thought everything was secure and everything was handled. Yet there are a lot of reports that not too many people now they believe it was the wrong approach 20 years into this.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott Neal, thank you very much for giving us your first-hand experience of Afghanistan and your analysis.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.